We often think about criminal liability focusing on, the person who actually does the main act, the one pulling the trigger, let's say.
Right.
But what happens when a crime, well, it literally couldn't succeed without someone else playing a very specific, crucial supporting part?
That's exactly what we're digging into today.
Mm.
It's a fascinating area of Philippine law, Article 17, Paragraph 3 of the revised Penal Code, principles by indispensable cooperation.
Okay. Principles by indispensable cooperation. And our mission here is really to understand what pushes someone from just being maybe an accomplice, someone who helps a bit, to being a full principal. And why should you care? Well, it's not just semantics. It drastically changes the potential penalty. We're talking the maximum versus something much lower.
Exactly. The law itself points to those who cooperate in the commission of the offense by another act without which it would not have been accomplished.
Okay, so that phrasing itself seems key. Another act, and without which it would not have been accomplished.
Precisely. You got three core things there. First, there's cooperation. Second, it has to be another act, something separate from the main execution of the crime. And third, the big one. That act must be indispensable, absolutely necessary.
So if that necessity is the bedrock, how do courts figure out the mental side? How do they prove someone performing maybe a seemingly secondary action actually shared the criminal goal?
That's the first big hurdle, what the law calls participation in the criminal resolution. Basically, did they share the same criminal purpose, a common will?
Does that mean they need proof of some secret meeting, like a conspiracy planned out weeks in advance?
Not necessarily, no. While a prior conspiracy certainly proves it, courts often infer this shared intent simply from how people acted together right before or during the crime. You look for that coordinated conduct. It suggests they desired the same outcome together.
Okay.
And that shared desire is what really separates them from an accomplice who might just, help out a bit without being fully committed to the criminal plan.
Right, that makes sense. So shared intent is one part, and the other you mentioned is indispensability. This sounds like the real differentiator.
It absolutely is. This is where the line is drawn. If the help provided was useful, maybe made things easier, but the crime could have happened without it, then you're likely looking at accomplice liability.
Which means a lower penalty.
Correct, a penalty 1 degree lower. But, and this is the crucial but, if that specific another act by the cooperator was so essential that the crime would have failed without it, then they are a principal. Same level as the person who executed the main act. Full penalty.
Okay, that's clear. But you mentioned something really surprising earlier about Philippine law involving negligence. How does that fit in?
Yes, this is quite unique. What if someone's negligence, their failure to be careful, is the indispensable act that allows someone else to commit an intentional crime, like, say, fraud through falsification?
Wait, negligence making you a principal in an intentional crime? That sounds counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it? But the courts have addressed this. In certain cases, they've held that if your lack of due care was the indispensable element enabling the intentional crime, you can be held as a principal.
Wow. So how is that liability framed then?
The legal characterization shifts. You're still a principal, but the crime attributed to you isn't the intentional fraud itself. It's framed as, say, estafa committed through reckless imprudence. It recognizes the unintentional nature of your specific contribution while still holding you to principal-level responsibility because your negligence was indispensable.
That's a really fine legal distinction. Okay, let's ground this with maybe a more straightforward example, the classic bank fraud scenario.
Yes, the Lim Blanco case is a perfect illustration. You have a bank customer, B, working with bank employee, our specific job, certifying checks.
Okay.
R knows B doesn't have enough funds, but R falsely certifies B's check anyway. The bank cashier, relying completely on R's official certification, then pays out the money to B.
So R didn't take the money directly, but...
Exactly.
Yeah.
R's act, the false certification, was distinct from B drawing the check. It was the another act. But was it indispensable? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without R's certification, the cashier wouldn't have paid. The fraud stops dead.
So R is a principal.
Correct. Held as a principal by indispensable cooperation. His act was the key.
Okay, that makes sense for fraud. But what about violent crimes? Say, someone holds a victim down while another person attacks them. Is holding them down another act of cooperation? Or is that basically direct participation in the assault itself?
That's where you see some, let's call it, analytical tension in the cases. Holding someone down could arguably be seen as part of the direct physical execution of the assault.
Right.
However, courts have often classified that restraining act, preventing escape or resistance, as indispensable cooperation. It's the separate act that ensures the main attacker can succeed. Cases like Cueva lean this way.
So the classification might be debated.
It can be, but interestingly, whether you classify it as direct participation or indispensable cooperation, the result is often the same in terms of punishment.
Yeah.
Both lead to liability as a principle. So sometimes the distinction becomes a bit academic for sentencing purposes.
Understood. So pulling this all together, the core takeaway is that indispensable cooperation means you share collective criminal responsibility.
Precisely. You and the person carrying out the main execution stand on the same ground legally. Same culpability, same penalty.
Wow. Okay, so for a final thought, how far does this idea of collective responsibility stretch, especially when acts happen sequentially?
Well, think about the really sobering implications in what's sometimes called the doctrine of turn-taking perpetrators, particularly in multiple rape cases.
Okay.
When several individuals are involved and one person's role is, say, to physically restrain the victim while others commit the assault, that act of restraint is often deemed indispensable cooperation for each subsequent assault carried out by the Confederates.
You mean even if they only restrained?
Even if their only physical act was restraining the victim to enable the others. Because that restraint was indispensable for each subsequent crime in that sequence, they could be held criminally liable as a principle for every single rape committed by the group. It powerfully underscores just how significant an indispensable act can be.
That really highlights the weight of that term. Indispensable cooperation carries immense legal consequence.
It certainly does. A crucial concept to understand in criminal liability.